So we're talking about how you are not obligated to worry. And this topic has come up a lot this week with the people that I work with, just people on Facebook, just kind of this kind of blame. You're not worried enough. You're not panicked or stressed or preparing enough. And people actually feeling worried about how worried other people think that they should be. And I think it's kind of a big deal. So we wanted to talk about it and help you guys out of that mental trap, that, double bind that's so difficult with a lot of different opinions right now.
Yeah, and this is something that, although it's manifesting in a particularly interesting way with the current situation and everyone being, confined to their home or whatever, or increasingly kind of prevented from going out and socializing and stuff like that. But this is not like a new thing. So, and this is to me what's really interesting about everything that's going on with the news and all of that, is that nothing new is happening. People are saying, "Oh, our lives are never going to be the same again because of this." Have you heard people saying this? And this to me is a really funny thing, because I don't necessarily see why that would be true at all. It doesn't really. People are never going to go to the movies again. Are you kidding me? People are never going to go to Disney World again. I don't buy that. I don't think that anything new is happening, particularly when we talk about interpersonal or intrapersonal issues and problems that are coming up. So, for example, this whole problem with an individual feeling bad about the way they feel at just like a really high kind of pattern level. I feel bad about the fact that I feel or do not feel X, Y, or Z. That's not a new thing. That's not a pandemic specific problem. That's some shit that people have been dealing with for a really long time, and that a lot of people deal with on a daily basis, regardless of whether or not anything is going wrong at large in society or not. It tends to magnify it. It tends to amplify it. There tends to be kind of, I think, an increased sensation of pressure. A more compelling invitation. It's like instead of just a piece of mail inviting you somewhere, it's like a certified mail, where they like sign off that you officially received it. It's like it has kind of a more authoritative pull about it. But it's basically the same thing. I talk to people all the time that feel bad. They're going through a divorce, and they feel bad about the fact that they don't feel more upset than they do, or they're going through a breakup and they feel bad about the fact that they don't feel worse about that, or they've lost a friend, or they've lost a family member. Like in some cases, I've talked to people and they've literally had like a parent die, and they feel bad about the fact that they aren't more devastated than they are. A lot of the time, and this is especially true for people if they lose their child. In some cases, that's like a horrific life event. That's like probably pretty much the worst thing that can happen to someone. And what sort of, as I'm kind of working with people and guiding them through this, what happens is over time they sort of, it's not that they're not necessarily grieving or that they don't, miss their child, but that they'll forget that their life is broken forever for a second, and they'll hear a song on the radio, or someone will just say or do something, and it'll just kind of make them laugh in spite of themselves, and then they'll catch themselves having a moment of kind of that uplifting feeling. They'll catch themselves not suffering, and then there's a part of them that goes, "Oh my God, I'm doing something wrong." And one of the big things for me is like, okay, if you are feeling bad, if you are worried, if you are freaked out, if you are concerned, if you are whatever, even if you kind of know you're overdoing it, even if you recognize this isn't serving me, this is costing me, whatever, we want to let that be okay, right? But what we really want to make sure we learn to let be okay is not feeling worse than we do. Because I can afford to feel as good as I do, and I can afford to feel as bad as I do. That's always true. I never really need to be feeling other than I am at a given moment in time. One thing I think that we really can't afford to do, though, is to feel bad about the fact that we don't feel worse than we do. That's a killer, because everybody wants to feel better. Everybody wants to feel more in control of their life. Everyone wants to feel more, just kind of at peace with the fact that they're dealing with what they're dealing with. Like, everyone wants that. And if part of my internal reasoning and part of my internal information strategy involves penalizing myself if I accidentally or on purpose stumble into or design a better feeling or figure out a way to not worry as much as I am, if I allow myself to punish myself for that, or if I allow myself to feel guilty for feeling better than I normally do, or if I allow myself to feel better than the majority of people around me seem to be feeling, or if I allow myself to feel better than the national circumstances seem to suggest is appropriate for me to be feeling, I got no chance. because the world is sending me all these invitations to feel horrible all of the time, not just when there's a pandemic. It's just that this is a really kind of, ripe for the picking opportunity. The news wants you to feel bad all the time. And if I catch myself feeling better than the world is inviting me to feel, or my circumstances are inviting me to feel, or my body is inviting me to feel, or whatever, my financial situation is inviting me to feel, and my response to that is not saying, holy shit, how am I doing this? This is useful, this is interesting, this is neat. I'm apparently able to feel in a way that outpaces the quality of what I'm dealing with currently. That's a cool thing to learn about yourself. If you don't respond that way, but if you respond by going, ooh, I better settle down. Oh, I better calm down. I'm not at recess. I'm at quiet time at school. I better not step out. I better not appear, sufficiently not dour to attract the ire of my friends, family members, or other people on social media. I'm in big trouble, and I think that's one of those things is just kind of accepting how you're feeling, one, and especially accepting it when you feel good. Even if someone, a critic in your head or a critic out in your world, seems to be disconcerted by the fact that you feel as good as you do or that you don't feel any worse than you do.
That's one of those things of like getting addicted to certain emotional states. Worry was just my norm. My background, normal state of being was to worry. Even now, it is so easy for me to worry if I wanted to. If I got myself into a certain state and made sense out of dwelling on and focusing on certain things and not focusing on other things, it would be very easy for me to get into an extreme freak out about something because those are well-worn mental pathways. But it gets less and less easy as I take new routes and make new choices. And like you said, you have to outpace reality. Because if you're just staying and responding to what is in front of you, to the reality that you see, if you keep responding to that in you're going to keep getting more of it because that's just how energy works. It's just how emotional states are like seeds and you're reaping the things that you are sowing. And so you kind of have to feel in advance of the evidence that's surrounding you. You have to feel beyond what your peers, your friends and family are inviting you to feel. Like you said, with your body, you have to outpace it. And so that's choosing to make sense out of feeling peaceful now so that you can reap peace later. And you just kind of know that's how everything functions. It seems chaotic outside of me. Everything seems like it's crumbling down, but I know I trust nature because this is, these mental laws, they're laws of nature. Like gravity, like the biological, it's just law of nature that when you focus your mind on what you want, you tend to create and manifest more of it. And so just focusing on that, and again, not beating yourself up if you find that you're worried. If I find that I get myself into a worried state, I don't judge me. I just say, how did I get here? How can I get back to where I want to be? And so, that obligation to worry, those big invitations, that pressure from people outside of you, it's going to be there. But you've got to choose, what am I going to do with this? And realizing you have a choice is the first step.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting too is and a lot of people, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the way that it is. I'm saying that this is a kind of portal out of a problem I used to have. When I began to think of it in this way, it helped me not have a problem that I used to have. And that's pretty much what everything that I share with you is about. It's not about like, here's the truth and this is what you need to accept. It's, hey, here's a problem I had. Here's a way of thinking about it that I kind of stumbled upon or developed or whatever, or synthesized. And then I was able to get out of that issue. Maybe I didn't change the relationship dynamic, but I changed the fact that it was a problem for me. I talk a lot about changing the experiential relevance of things. So, for example, if your parents feel about you a certain way and that isn't likely to change and you don't necessarily want to spend time trying to change that because it just seems like a fool's errand, what I can do is I can change the experiential relevance of the manner in which they feel. I can change the impact that has on what it's like to be me. And the way that I do that is that I look at what I have to do with my perception of their perception and experience of me, which is to say, how is it that it seems to me that they think about me? What is it that it seems to me that they think about me? And then what do I have to do in terms of assigning meaning to the fact that they feel that way in order to create the negative experience or the unpleasant experience or the unresourceful experience that I don't want to be having? And then I start to change those things. And then the way that it seems to me that they feel about me may stay the same. But the relevance to that in terms of what it's like to be me changes, right? It becomes totally irrelevant. It becomes less of a negative influence. It just becomes neutral. There's all sorts of interesting things that can happen. And so one of the things that a lot, and I've seen some people who are kind of writing about this, they say, well, I'm trying to explain myself I'm not afraid of this virus. I'm not concerned about this, or I'm sort of measured in my concern. I'm just kind of taking it easy. I'm just going with the flow. I'm more or less implementing the suggestions, but I'm just not talking about it constantly. But my friends and family members are very upset about it. And personally for me, the first step, putting your foot in that bear trap is trying to convince your friends and family that what you think is all right and that what they think is wrong. and that, to me, I never try to convince anybody of anything, hardly ever. Mostly you, if anything. And even then, it's usually not a good idea. Because so often what's happening here is not that person A and person B are exchanging information in an adult way to come to a conclusion about what the appropriate thing to do is. People are playing let's you and me fight. People are playing uproar. People are playing outrage. They're using the circumstance as a venue, as a sort of an arena in which they can kind of play out adversarial interpersonal dynamics that existed before any of this started happening. And so especially with your family members in particular, if they have an impression of you that you're kind of like the crunchy granola or the sort of, what you call it, like the new age thinker or the alternative health person.
I can't even imagine what people think of me. I actually haven't thought about that in a really long time.
That's a more
about who I am to those people or how they might consider me.
Right.
Because I'd say I'm pretty divergent from most of the people that
so?
knew me at one point. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that. But I think that's a mark of intelligence, though, that you don't think much of what other people think of you. Which is to say, there's kind of two meanings there, right? I don't think about what they think about me a lot, because that's essentially mind reading, and I generally am going to do it in an uncharitable way, uncharitable for them, uncharitable for me. I'm gonna imagine that they think terrible things about me. That's gonna make me feel bad, and I'm gonna think things about them that if they knew I was thinking that, they would feel bad, and it's just a big mess that's not worth anybody's time. But what I can start doing, and this is the thing, is like I don't want to try to convince anybody of anything. And this is an important principle, I think. This has been very important for me. I don't need anybody else to understand what I understand in order for what I understand to enrich my experience to the extent that it's possible for what I understand to do so. There's this human tendency towards reflexive proselytism, right? Which is that I found some information, I found an idea, I found something new, a new way of thinking about things, and before I even use that new way of thinking, the first thing I've got to do is go tell my mom about it, go tell my siblings about it, go convince my friend group that this is the way to do it and all of this.
That's the old me.
Yeah, and that, it's not wrong, but it creates a lot of problems for a lot of people. The first problem that it creates is that it tends to cause people to overlook something that I find very wonderful, which is I want to play with that idea myself. I want to implement that idea in my own experience. I don't necessarily want to see what someone else thinks about it. Why do I care what anybody else thinks about it? I want to put that spice, that idea, into the soup of my own personal experience and see how it affects the flavor of what it's like to be me. I don't want to take the jar of spice to somebody else before I've even put it in my soup and say, this is the best spice ever. This is the best idea ever. This is the best school of thought ever. Hey, did you know that this isn't real and that's not real and this is a conspiracy and that never happened and this thing's happening now and no one knows about this and all. And then it becomes this game of convincing this other person, and then we play basically this unspoken game called I'm going to convince you, and the other person goes, oh yeah, I don't think so. And then we pretend like it's about a pandemic, but it's not. It's about sibling, dynamics that were developed a long time ago or something like that. My thing is, I don't want my friends and family to know what I think about a lot of things. And it's not that I'm hiding it necessarily, but I find that if I have that attitude where let me just play a game and let me see if I can keep what I think about politics secret from them. Let me just see if I can avoid ever going on record on this subject matter. What tends to happen is the other person really has to ask before they get my opinion. And usually they have to ask more than once. And usually they have to kind of insist on getting the information. And I can tell usually by the manner in which they're inquiring what the inquiry is really designed to do. Is the inquiry really designed to get information from me about me so that they can learn something about their friend, family member, partner, whatever? Or are they on a fishing expedition to find something that they can have a grievance with? And the cool thing is, based on how they're trying to gather that information. I can make a choice about whether or not I'm going to supply it, one. And two, in the event that I tell them and they get all upset, I'm going to say, well, listen, you asked me 5 times what I thought about this. I actually kind of went way out of my way to avoid telling you this stuff. And I think that this whole situation affords people a really great opportunity to see, like, I just want to be heard by my friends and family. People say that a lot, right? Isn't that was like in a post or something that we saw. And on the surface, that's a reasonable desire to have, right? That a member of a given family would want to be heard by that family. That seems perfectly legitimate. That seems perfectly rational. There's not any necessarily games underlying that. But when the individual is you, and when the family that you want to be heard by is your family, sometimes the game element of this stuff begins to come out. Is that desire on my part, is that desire designed to create frustration, disappointment, conflict, rejection, estrangement, conflagration, fights? Is that desire for that particular person? Like, I want this individual who is my mother or my brother or my sister, I want that person to understand me. Not because of who they are as an individual, but because of who they are to me. They're my brothers, so they have to understand me. They're my siblings, so they have to respect my viewpoint. Well, sometimes that works when your brother or your sister happens to be open-minded or happens to be congenial or happens to be kind of tolerant of things. But sometimes people's brothers are not open-minded and they're not particularly congenial and they're not particularly interested in learning about other individuals. And if that's the case, I want to examine that and say, is wanting that person to understand me likely to improve what it's like to be me? And if the answer to that is no, then I'm going to say, okay, well then why do I want that person to understand me? Is it because I just never thought about the fact that it probably isn't a good idea, isn't probably a project worthwhile? Or am I under the influence of some kind of game? So his thing that he does is that he's not tolerant, and the thing that I do is that I demand from him tolerance, and that way we can have a family dynamic that's like this. And I think that identifying that, like, why do I look outside myself for other people to sort of to sort of endorse my experience, my feelings, my way of thinking about things? Why do I care what they think about what I think about X? And if you start answering that question for yourself, you start the project of personal freedom. I think that's that path is, and again, that's dealing with your own stuff, right? That's dealing with things that a lot of people I think take for granted. Well, of course, everyone wants their parents to understand them. Not me. I mean, it's not that important to me. I mean, I get them. I mean, I understand. They're great people, but is it important that they understand how I feel about this particular world issue? Not really. Why would it be?
Yeah, like, I guess the thought of stay in your own lane is like a thing that's said sometimes, but it's a thing that's relevant all times. We all need to stay in our own lane. Like, people are like, shouting out the window about what other people should be doing, and they're not really in their lane, doing their thing, taking care of their own business. And I think that really figuring out what's my work. My work is not to appease my friends and family. My work is not to match and mirror them, which is a big thing that goes on. And, a lot of people, they are very empathetic, and they very much because they believe it's important to hear other people and to take on their emotions, or, they just seem to naturally do that without taking first and foremost, taking care of their own state of being. And so I feel like a lot of times we are sacrificing our state if we have a capacity to get to a good state for having a conversation or hearing out someone else, and that we match each other, we mirror each other. And, people, different theories of contagion, like in the contagion of worry, of fear, of panic, of, mirror neurons, and I'm going to mirror you. I'm going to mirror your facial expressions because I want you to know that, I'm a member of this pack. And so we don't, and so we mirror each other, but sometimes it's to our detriment. And so that's am I staying in my lane? Am I putting on my own oxygen mask first? Am I minding my own consciousness before I look to the world? Am I having a moment within before I open my phone? Am I having a moment to say, how do I want to feel today? And you determine before you open your eyes to the world, no matter what goes on in the internet, no matter what I hear, no matter what the news happens to be, no matter what text, no matter what, information from my bank account, whatever, I am going to focus my mind on what I want of the two options. When things come to my attention, I can focus on what I want or on what I don't want. Today, I'm going to do my very best to focus on what I want. That's responding resourcefully. That's what everything we talk about, every video, I think, we becoming a resourceful responder. That's responding in a way that feels good, that's solution oriented. And if you do that, if you kind of devote yourself to that before doing anything for anybody else, you will manage your own inner state. You will kind of be like the queen of your own kingdom rather than being bossed around by the external world and being told how to feel. And that's what we have, is a ton of people. That's why the media is a problem, is because people are used to being told how to feel, and so they are at the whims of whoever is dancing the puppets. It's like you just follow suit. And that's why you have to choose. I'm not going to follow suit today. I'm going to set the tone. I'm going to chart my course. And then I'm going to respond swiftly, and react, responsively, appropriately to whatever happens to come my way today.
Yeah, it's interesting. To the extent that a person really implements or really practices what they preach, they tend to preach less. They tend to preach less in non-essential situations. So, for example, we're making a video here, and we're talking about how we do things. We're sharing with you how we do things. I'm not on the phone with my mom. I'm not at a family reunion doing that, though. This is kind of an intrinsic part of my life, of my business, and I assume that this is voluntary. No one's forcing you to watch this video, and so I like to kind of create a buffet of ideas and kind of put it out there for people who want to hear it. But my friends, like the people with whom I associate on just a pure, just daily level, the people that we encounter like on our weekly, they don't know what I think about mindset stuff. If I wake up in the morning and I'm conscious of the meanings that I'm assigning to the things that are going on in my life, and I assign my meanings consciously and intentionally in a way that serves me, and if that improves what it's like to be me, I'm less inclined to get in an argument with someone else on the internet about how important mindset is or meaning assignment is, because I don't need them to be persuaded by what is effective for and what's working for me. Now, if I trained at such and such school and they trained at so and so school and they're all about the heart and I'm all about the mind, and I am really focused on getting my message out there, and I'm not necessarily using this stuff so much as telling everybody else about the stuff that I've been trained to do, well, then I got to get in an argument with them because I need them to agree with me, right? But what the hell do I care what somebody else thinks about the way that I think if I know that the way that I think is improving what it's like to be me? The proof is in the experiential pudding, and the compulsion to foist the idea on a particular other person goes away. The desire to share the idea freely with those who may be interested in hearing it grows exponentially. The desire to offer it out there to people who have expressed interest in learning about it and who want to learn how to implement it in their life, or maybe want to hear about how you've implemented it in your life, that goes through the roof. But the feeling that you need to get a particular other person on board, or that you need a specific other person to understand something about you or about the way that you think and feel or the way that you're acting, that vanishes totally, to the extent that your measure for how you feel about what you're doing is the effect that it's having on what it's like to be you and the results that it's producing in your life and the way that it's affecting your ability to help people who wish to be helped by you or who are open to be helped by you. And I think that that's one of those big things, is that there is, and you see this manifest on social media all the time. There's this coercive element to the exchange of ideas. I think that consent is really important when it comes to a productive exchange of ideas. So often what we see is a kind of argumentative and combative thing where I barrage you with facts or data, or I barrage you with a line of reasoning. And there's a fundamentally and intrinsically kind of violent and coercive attitude there. I'm going to get you back into a corner where you can't but acknowledge how right I am, or reveal that you're disreputable because you're not playing by the rules of reason or whatever it is. This happens in families a lot. You sit down with Uncle so-and-so, and Uncle so-and-so has an opinion and you've got an opinion, and you know that it's like a Cold War that could escalate to a thermonuclear warfare at any moment, and it's who's going to get the jabs in and the hits in and who's going to make the other person look foolish or whatever. I don't play that game. I'm not interested in that. If someone wants to argue with me, if someone wants to fight with me, it's not, I respect that person so much that I trust them and I have this idea that says that they're 100% responsible for their experience of me. Which is to say that if the fact that they have an idea, that I have an idea that's different than the ideas that they have, if that bothers them, that's not my problem. It's not my responsibility. That's their problem. Now, there's another kind of an addendum to that says that I am 100% responsible for my experience of their behavior as a result, the way that they're behaving towards me as a result of their experience of me. I'm responsible for that. And one of the best ways that I found to deal with people who don't like what I'm saying is to say that that's okay, that it's okay. I don't need them to like what I'm saying in order for what I'm talking about to be of use to me, if in fact what I'm talking about is useful. And there's a respect in there that is so subtle. And I would say that there's even an intimacy there that is not the kind of intimacy that is sort of super sweet and saccharine and easy to recognize, like, oh, look at this, look at how intimate. It's not like that. It's that I know that you think that I'm a nut. I know that you think that I talk too much. I have the impression that you're not interested in me and you don't understand why anyone would want to listen to me. And I'm okay with the fact that you feel that way. I get it. I probably feel that way about certain other people in the world, and those people are probably of tremendous benefit to a lot of other people who feel differently about them. And so because I don't need people to think or feel differently about me than they do at a given moment in time, I'm not attacking them. I'm not trying to, like, I don't know if you ever see like Terminator 2 Judgment Day. There's this scene where they've got to go into Arnold Schwarzenegger's head. He's this robot, and they've got to go into his head and remove a chip or something that was preventing him from doing something. They wanted to make him more autonomous. I don't remember exactly what this. I'm ashamed to say I don't remember exactly what the purpose was, but they had to remove this thing. And I feel like sometimes when people are arguing, if it were physical, if the verbal argument were manifested physically, it would look like me trying to kind of like tear your head open and get the idea that disagrees with my ideas, to pull that out and to force in an idea that was like consistent with mine. And that to me is just gross. And I understand why people do it, because I used to do it, because I used to inside feel as though I need you to see what I'm seeing the way that I see it in order for me to feel okay. Because I need to feel like my model of reality is right, or right enough. And if you don't agree with it, well, then I'm thinking, God, is there something wrong with my reality? Is there something wrong with my model of reality? Am I incorrect here? Instead of doing that, though, instead of seeking external validation, I discovered it works a lot better to just test my model, test my way of thinking, just to sit and say, is the way in which I'm dealing with this situation working for me currently? And if the answer to that is no, well, then you got work to do, because what it's like to be you told you had work to do. And if the answer is yes, well, then guess what? You don't need them to feel differently than they do. You don't even need them to realize what you realize about how much you don't need each other to agree, right? So you recognize that it's okay if you guys disagree, but they don't. Do you recognize that you don't need them to recognize that it's okay that you disagree in order for you to feel okay about the fact that there's a disagreement? That's personal freedom, and it's incredibly powerful.
It's the best thing ever. I mean, it really is. When you release the need for people to understand you in that sense, you release them from controlling you, essentially. And when you are no longer being controlled by someone outside of you, you are free. And so when you have that ability to, for someone to want you to be worried, or for them to push their ideas and beliefs on you, it doesn't affect you in that same way. It doesn't rock your core, because I know some people, they're just like, I'm good, but I'm a little unstable because of what other people are thinking. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the thing is, though, is, and this is something that I love, is, the truth shall set you free. And if it's not setting you free, it's not true. If some information you're getting from someone is like causing you to feel like deeply disturbed and you're feeling very uncertain and very afraid, I write that off. That must not be true, because that's not making me feel safe and not making me feel like I can trust myself. And that's the thing, is people are undermining your ability to trust yourself, to like use your own rational mind to think for yourself. And there were even some like really, groupthink, mind control 1984 titles of articles about, the thing of saying like, people shouldn't rely on their own judgment. They need to listen to the experts. I'm like, excuse me, you're telling people, don't think, listen to me. And I don't care how good your information is, that is going to turn me off immediately. That's going to make me very suspicious of you, because you're saying you, Mr. in the white coat, Mr. with the credentials, know more about my experience than I do. And that, I think, is one of the core fundamental underlying problems that all people have, is they don't trust themselves. They don't trust their own rational thought capacity. They need to be told what to do by a teacher, leader, preacher, government agency. Like, someone needs to tell me what to do. Tell me the rules. I don't know how to think. And that is, I think, one of the fundamental, problems with people is they don't know how to think, and they don't trust themselves to make decisions for themselves. So that's why everybody watches the news, and we look at influencers and we're saying, how do I want to be influenced? And we find people to influence us. Typically, it's either the people that influenced our parents or the polar opposite of the people that influenced our parents.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, is taking back control of your mind means thinking for yourself and trusting your own judgment. The undermining of your own judgment, and this is really good. That's actually, I read an excerpt in a book on a video like a year or two ago from this book by Nathaniel Branden, and it's about the mixed messages we get early on in life from our caregivers, and how we are taught to not think about things and not ask questions about things. There are, you get to a certain age and you just kind of like accept, oh, this is the way we do things. And you encounter this irrationality. You hear your parents say one thing explicitly, but then you watch them do the exact opposite implicitly, and you're like, what's going on here? And you're trying to learn how to do life and do interactions with people, and you're like, oh, there's some things we say but don't do, and some things we do but don't say. And so we get really confused about our own inner workings, and that is detrimental to a free human being, because they're constantly vulnerable to being controlled by someone who's got an authoritative voice. Oh, authoritative voice, I'm going to listen to you because I don't know how to think for myself, honestly, is what's going on.
And there's a distinction, I think, too, between, okay, people are saying an expert said this, that, the other thing. So I'm going to take that in consideration. I'm going to consider the fact that someone who is credentialed or recognized as an expert said, wash your hands, stay away from big groups of people. All right, fine. I mean, is that a big deal for me? No, not really. I can do that. So I don't necessarily feel like I'm betraying some aspect of myself by doing those things. The cost of doing those things is relatively minimal. The potential benefits of that are relatively high. And if things are as bad as people are saying that they are, maybe I'll do that. Maybe it'll help somebody else. Maybe they won't die. Who knows? The interesting thing, though, and this is kind of a personal story, I think that might kind of relay this. I went to a dermatologist when I was in college, and it was a guy I was seeing for the first time. I had been to a previous guy, but then he had a heart attack and died, so I had to go find a new dermatologist. And I loved my previous guy. He was great because we would talk about like the founding fathers. He was a history buff and all this, and so when he was doing his dermatology, we would talk about Thomas Jefferson. But anyway, it was a funny kind of thing, kind of a Larry David like situation. But I went to this new dermatologist, and the guy I had been given kind of like like very minor little treatments. Here's a little cream put on your face. It'll make you look better. It'll take that acne away. And I was like, oh, I was comfortable with that. I go to this new guy, and this new guy's like, we're going to give you Accutane. And I'm thinking, hey, now, hang on. This is that stuff that causes deformities in babies, and you can't, your girlfriend can't touch it if she's of childbearing age and all this different stuff. That stuff. And this guy, he's like, yeah, it's that, but it's safe. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then he has to give you this very thick pamphlet, and it's got skull and crossbones on it. And I mean, in my mind, I remember like the radioactive symbol. I don't think it was actually there in the biohazard. But anyway, a big pamphlet of government warnings about how this stuff can really mess you up. If it's if this happens, if that if things go wrong, and even if you take it properly, some certain things can happen. And I was concerned. And so I asked the guy, I said, I'm kind of concerned about this. It's kind of intense. And, in the past, this other thing has always really worked for me. And he became so offended. I mean, he was almost livid. And I wasn't disrespectful about this. I wasn't like, well, Gwyneth Paltrow said that I should just put mushroom cream on. I wasn't like that. And I saw on Netflix because I don't even think Netflix was around at the time. It was like the DVDs, It's like I wasn't being that way. I was just like, as an individual, this looks kind of scary. I've never had to sign one of these things before. What am I signing to get this cream that's so innocuous, or this pill or whatever? He was upset that I would even dare ask him that question. He was upset that I was thinking. He was irritated that someone with his credentials should have to deign to explain to me anything, or that I would be at all participating in my healthcare. That I would have a voice or a say, or that my concern would be that if I said to myself, oh, this looks dangerous, in his mind, the appropriate response would be for me to say, well, the doctor wouldn't give it to me if that was dangerous. And so I was supposed to shut down my thinking. And the fact that I didn't do that for him was a personal slight. And that, in my personal opinion, and I guess sort of now as a professional sort of life coach person, that's an asshole. That's what that person was. It's possible for an asshole to get a degree. And just because they get a degree doesn't mean they suddenly stop being an asshole. And it doesn't mean that they leave the asshole part of themselves at the door when they check in and go to work. And if they are overbearing, if they are, I don't know, if they're super patriarchal, if they're super matriarchal, if they think men and women are stupid, or women are stupid, or whoever, if they think everyone who doesn't have their degree is stupid, probably thinks the other doctors are stupid too, whatever, they're going to bring that into the profession with them. And so that's why for me, I'm like, okay, I'm weighing your credentials, but I'm also observing the manner in which you're interacting with me as a human being. And it seems like what you're trying to get me to do is stop thinking and stop asking questions. And because of that, I want to get as far away from you as I possibly can, as quickly as I possibly can. And I think that watching these articles and all of this different stuff, and every time, and this is one of these interesting things about bullshit. Bullshit is never just presented to you on a silver platter with a little sign in it that says this is bullshit. That's never how it's presented to you. It's always presented to you in a way that makes it either it's wrapped in nice paper, it's wrapped in facts, it's wrapped in something legitimate, or it's presented kind of at the same time as something else that's legitimate. And it's kind of like you hear about, like with these bills that are being passed, that there are some emergency measures that the government's trying to put out to help kind of offset the economic impact of people not going to work and all this different stuff. And there are certain people, probably a lot of people in the legislative bodies, that are using the urgency as an opportunity to cram a bunch of other stuff through, or cram measures through that they wanted to get through before, but they're like, ooh, we know that they really need to get this through now, so let's just put this on. They wouldn't normally go for it. Maybe they will now.
And no one ever reads the bills because they're this long and you've got 3 days to decide.
We've got to pass it to find what's in it. That's great. Well, we've got to eat this berry to find out if it's poison. Sounds like a good plan. And so for me, in this situation, you don't have to believe that there is no health risk. You don't have to believe that viruses aren't dangerous, or that viruses don't exist, or that people don't get sick, or that no one's going to die, or that a lot of people are going to die. You don't have to not believe any of that stuff. You don't have to disbelieve any of those things in order to recognize that whatever the facts are, plus an objective discussion of the facts, is not the only thing that's going on here. There's a lot of other stuff that's going on too. There are all sorts of dysfunctional tendencies that people who are journalists or people who are on social media have, and you can see how those parts come out to play when this kind of stuff is going on. You can see how part of the way in which the stuff is presented is designed to terrify people, and you can also see the eagerness and the alacrity with which some subset of the population, some large portion of the population, is eager to be terrified, is willing to be manipulated, is saying, because if I recognize how bad it is, and my neighbor or my cousin or my sister or my brother doesn't, you know what I get to do? I'm not the authority and the expert, but I got them on my side. And so I can use this as an opportunity to vent all of my frustrations that I have towards that person. I can wag my finger at them, and they can't come back at me because CNN said. And I think the thing is, if that's what's going on in your life, if that's what's going on in your interactions with your family or your friends or whoever, you just recognize the way that you win a con game is that you recognize it as a con game and you just don't participate. If you're not persuaded by the panic and there's someone else who is persuaded by the panic and they're spoiling for a fight if anybody is less panicked than they are, or if anyone's going to rain on their parade, their panic parade and their panic party, let them be. Just let them do their thing. And I personally would be interested in finding out what is it about my way of interacting with information that makes it so that I feel like I need them to agree with me that this isn't something that we have to panic about. People talk about speaking your truth a lot. For me, I'm a live my truth kind of person, and I don't use that terminology because it's kind of flaky. It's just not my style, Too many other people have said it already, and my vanity makes me want to say my own thing. And that's the real thing, is that I want to quote myself. I don't want to quote other people. Stephen Robinson once said that. But anyway, it's pretty true. The thing, I'm sort of joking, but not really. So sort of, what do you call this? This is. What is that called when you sort of jokingly admit something about yourself that's off-putting? That's what that was. But living my truth versus speaking it, to the extent that I am doing the stuff that I think works and that is good, I don't have to talk about it all the time. I don't have to make sure everybody knows about it. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm afraid to talk about it, because I've spent probably too much time talking about it to you right here, right? And it's not that I'm incapable of doing it or that I'm afraid of doing it. But if I'm talking to, Aunt so-and-so on the telephone and she's worried or something like that, or she seems to be inviting me to kind of go, oh, pretty bad, huh? Yeah, it's real bad. Oh, did you hear so-and-so? And Fauci said this, and da-da-da, and in Italy, and then da-da-da. I don't know. It's going to be pretty bad. The government's going to do this, and the economy's going to do this, and yeah, we can. Well, the governor of West Virginia said we could go to Bob Evans, but I don't think it's a good. And, you feel that invitation to kind of like get involved, or you feel that they're fishing for the objection that at some unconscious level they know that you have. I don't have to, in order to feel like I'm an authentic person, I don't have to play that game. I can just remain silent, right? Because I am, in fact, undisturbed. I am, in fact, experiencing equanimity. I am actually okay. And so I don't need to kind of rub it in their face if they're doing the panic party, or if their life experience, or if their, concerns, or their just way of thinking causes them to be freaked out. I can sort of be graceful in how I handle that. And beyond that, I can even be graceful about how I handle their intrusive efforts to sort of tractor beam me like the Death Star pulling the Millennium Falcon into the the place. It's like there's no getting out. They're trying to tractor beam me into a discussion where I either have to agree with them and say something I don't believe is true, or disagree with them and then get into a whole thing and then hear about how they went on and talked to my mom and told my mom about how I said something crazy and now the family's gossiping about it. I could just remain silent. That'll drive them crazy because they know what you really think usually, but you're not giving them anything to work with. You're not playing the game. And that is to have the option of doing that is such a wonderful thing. And for me, having that option really is about, listen, I'm in my house not worrying. I'm in my house doing business like normal. I'm in my house helping people. I'm in my house sharing ideas with people on my computer, on my iPad, posting stuff. I'm working out. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my thing. My thing's working for me. Some people seem to like what I'm doing. And so do I need so-and-so or such? I don't need any one particular person to feel about me other than however it is that they have decided to feel about me. And so that means that, and this is kind of this principle, right? Interject at any time, as always.
No, I'm loving it. It's good.
As always, like there's this principle, I think we heard this from Neville Goddard first, right? That what I do to or for another, I do to or for myself. And if I attempt to constrain the freedom, this is interesting to me. If I attempt to constrain the freedom of another person, what I'm going to end up doing is constraining my own freedom. Now, most of you probably don't wake up in the morning and like twirl your mustache and say, how can I constrain someone's freedom today? It's probably not, nefarious like that. But what's really interesting is that if I, inside or deep down, feel as though I really need you to think about me or to think about a situation in a particular way, and if I feel like you don't think that way about it, I'm going to begin to sort of bend my mind on controlling you, influencing you, coercing you to step into alignment with what I think what I think I need you to think about that in order for me to feel better about my own position in life or to feel better about what I think about the situation. I will unconsciously and unintentionally conspire to constrain your freedom. And you know what I'll do in so doing? I will constrain my own freedom because I will buy into the idea that I need you to be other than you are in order for me to be okay. And good luck getting you to be that way. You know this is true. You know that this is worse than herding cats. Do you know what I mean? It's a terrible thing. But you know what I can do, though? What I do to or for another, I do to or for myself. If I extend to you the freedom to think about the situation, to think about what I think about the situation, to feel about the situation, to feel about what I think and feel about the situation, whatever it is that you do, I extend to myself the freedom to be unaffected by however it is you think or feel about the situation. It's this wonderful thing where I feel as though I'm trying to keep you under my control. But what's really happening is I'm putting myself under the control of the idea that I need to be able to control you in order to be okay. And when I look at you and I look at what I think you're thinking of me and all this different stuff, and I say, okay, maybe that's just fine that you think those things, and maybe I don't need you to feel some other way than you do, what happens is I free you from my meddling interference in what you think, and I free myself from the idea that I need to meddle in order to bring you in line with a certain particular idea. And then you can actually start doing the work. So you thought that was work. That's not work. That's just that's doing the preliminary work of extricating ourselves from all of the bullshit distractions that prevent us from getting to what the real work is. And the real work is what it's like to be you and figuring out what that's made of. And of course, for a lot of people, trying to control others and feeling like they need to be able to control others is a big part of what it's like to be them. And it's a big part of what makes what it's like to be them not as good as it could be.
And you use up all your psychic energy on that controlling element. And I think that that ultimately comes down to not trusting yourself and the stuff that you're believing in. Because I don't, if like you said, if what I'm doing is working for me, I don't need you to believe it. It's like, and if I think that my way is, quote, the right way, don't you think that that person eventually, if their method stops working for them at some point, that they're going to come around to you and say, hey, you seem to be getting the results that you want in your life. How did you do that? Mm-hmm. And I say, I do it in this way. But that's the thing is, if I'm trusting what I'm doing and I trust my own judgment and I'm thinking for myself, you know, and I don't care what you're thinking and I've got no like dog in that fight, it's like, okay, you know, that's fine. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in how you are living and the results that you are getting. A person that's, you know, choosing panic, worry, propaganda, like, and they're just like sucked into it, you know, it sucks to see someone who you care about buying into something. And when you've got like a way of thinking about it where you're just like, I'm so free from that. I'd love for you to be free from that, but you can't shove freedom down anyone's throat. They've got to come to it on their own. And so thinking in this way just frees you from that. And it does, like you said, it gets you to your work. It gets you to like the things that are going to like move you closer to the things, the way that you want to be living, to your ideal self. And once you are free from that, you have so much more psychic energy to put behind building instead of like whatever it is you were doing before. That's really a powerful thing. And I think that's a really, right now we've got more invitations than ever before. It's a great time. It's a great, great, great time to change your reactions to life, change how you are responding, decide this identity. Who do I want to be in the world? What is my ideal self? Have you ever thought about that? You know, like how does she respond to things? How does she go about her business and her life? I mean, I'd like to be her. And so you have to craft her first. You have to know this is how she thinks about things. This is what she spends her time doing. And you start aligning yourself to that kind of master plan. And you don't beat up on yourself if you're not like, you know, up to par all the time, because your old patterns will keep you reacting in the same old ways. But that's your goal. And you kind of like I said earlier, you set the tone for your day. You decide, this is my intention. There's such power behind just intending to do something. Hello, self. That's why I have this journal that I write in. This is how I'd like to respond to things today. This is how I'd like to react. This is my ideal version. Let me dwell upon her for a moment and maybe do my best to bring her into the rest of the day with me. Sometimes I do great, sometimes not so great, but that's me doing my work. And that is like what I teach people how to do in my coaching. I know that's what you teach people to do in your coaching. That's what we teach people to do in every single one of our online courses, of which there are many. We teach you how to do that for yourself so that it's all you. You just, you know, choose from the buffet of the tools that have worked for us in creating better results in areas of our lives and doing our own inner work. And you say, oh, I'm going to try that and use it on yourself. And it's not a method. You know, a lot of people kind of ask like, oh, what kind of coaching do you do, or what kind of like method, you know, because there's a lot of methods out there.
They ask you that because they're trying to decide whether or not they're going to decide that what you do is going to help them, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, that happened to me a little kind of something like that earlier today with someone. You know, they're like, oh, I want this kind of you know, coach who understands these certain things, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I am that kind of coach, because I'm not in a label. We just kind of do these tools that have worked for us, and so there's no like official name for the type of coaching we do, I don't think.
Well, no, I think by the time,
a better life.
By the time you name something, or you get to the point where you can say, here's a specific thing that I do and it's going to work, you've already, you've stepped outside of helping people awaken to the real essence of what's actually going to work. I like to show people the source code. I like to show people at a pattern level what it's made out of, because once you understand that, you can do anything with it. You can do whatever you want with it. It's not confined to or constrained by a particular particular type of presentation. It's just there's something called what it's like to be you. There's this thing. It's your experience. It's what it's like for you to. It's the sensation of existing, and it's made out of thoughts and feelings and behaviors and stuff going on in your external world and all of this. And it's made out of how you're relating to those things, and it's made out of tons of different stuff that we get into talking about. But I want to help people tap into the experiential reality that, yeah, there is something that it's like to be you, and that everything that you care about that in as much as whatever it is important or plays an important role in the quality and the character of what it's like to be you. And until a person starts to wake up to that, and until a person develops the ability not just to come in contact with an idea and then create kind of an experiential reaction. My mind mixes with that idea. There's a bad feeling, there's a good feeling, there's a scared feeling, there's an excited feeling, there's a bored feeling, there's a confused feeling, there's whatever. Until I have the ability to back and watch my mind, watch the idea, watch them come together, watch the way that they come together, because maybe they're a perfect fit, but they're coming together like this. Right? Maybe everything that I learn about personal growth, I interpret it and listen to it in terms of what it's saying is wrong with me, and so I create a bad feeling, and I don't like the way that feels, and so it doesn't ever quite come together. If I can see that I'm doing that, I can go and then try it out this way, and I can see how it feels when it comes together like this. Nothing feels good when it's like this. Stuff sometimes feels good when it's like this. So I want a person to be able to figure out why they like certain things and not other things, why they resonate with certain ideas and not others, because then if they can see how they do not resonating, they can choose whether or not they want to recalibrate things such that they do resonate with something. If they feel bad every time they try to start improving their behavior, we can figure out exactly how. It's not just something that happens. It happens because there are certain things that we do unconsciously and unintentionally when we come into contact with this type of idea, that type of idea, this suggestion. You see someone who's in better physical shape than you. What do you think? Do you think, God, it'd feel great to be in that kind of physical shape? I wonder how I can do it. Or do you say to yourself, does it remind you of how bad you feel about the way that you are now? You see someone who's making more money than you do. Do you say to yourself, oh, that's what's wrong with this world. I bet they're dishonest and I bet they're doing bad things. Or do you say to yourself, God, that's interesting. If they can do it, I bet I can do it too. I bet it's possible for me. I bet there is a way. And there's a voice in your head that goes, yeah, but the world's not fair and people don't pay enough for what you do and they don't respect real things. They just buy cheap crap. And then you see that voice and you go, boy, that voice isn't very much fun. And you say to yourself, okay, let's say all of that stuff is true. I bet even given that, there's probably a way for me to create the results that I want in my life. That's real freedom because you get to have a choice about how you're going to respond to the way that you react to the things that you see and interact with in your world. And one thing that you mentioned before, kind of like digressing a little bit, because I think this is it's been important for me. One of my rules is that if I find myself thinking that I know what you need to think in order to improve what it's like to be you. Like if I notice in myself a sensation that I know what Tori needs to think in order to improve her life and live the kind of life that she wants to, right? If I think that the fact that I think I know what you need to do means that I know what you need to do, I'm in trouble. Now the truth is, I do think that I know what most of the people watching this need to do in some broad general sense. I do think that I know a method that can help anyone who would be watching this now or later create more of what they want in life and less of what they don't. I think that I know that, right? But I don't think that the fact that I think that means that it's literally absolutely true, and that therefore everyone who doesn't do what I want them to do, I'm going to badger them and follow them around or think badly of it. It's like, well, yeah, I think I can help them. I think that this method's really awesome, but that's what people who have methods think about their methods. They think their methods are awesome, and that leaves that door open for you to decide whether this is right for you or not. It makes it possible for this relationship, whatever it's going to be. Maybe it's just this video. Maybe it's just the live videos we do. Maybe it's just the podcast. Maybe you just take a course. Maybe it's a course in coaching. Maybe we form a long-term relationship working together. Whatever. It makes it possible for that to begin in a really just kind of like equal kind of parity, consensual way. We start it off right. I am not convinced that I know how you need to be. And the reason that I used to be really convinced that I knew exactly what you needed to do. And I noticed that being convinced in that way was interfering with my ability to be maximally useful to people and therefore to create the results I wanted in my life, which was making money, creating happy clients, right? And helping people create what they wanted in their life. The reason that I cultivate inside myself a healthy sense of uncertainty with regard to what any one specific person needs to do with their life is that I feel like that uncertain. I feel like you deserve to come into contact with someone who cares about your experience and who thinks that ultimately you're the best person to decide what the experience needs to be like and how you're going to go about creating it. And I think that very few people, I think a lot of people have come into contact with people who want them to be happy, but who don't trust you to figure out how to create happiness in your life. And I feel like you don't get the full mix. You got to have them both. You have to have someone who cares about you and wants the best for you and recognizes that the best for you can't happen unless you become the measure of all things in your life, unless somebody in your life communicates to you explicitly and implicitly. You're never going to have the quality of life that you deserve unless you yourself figure out how to decide that you're the only person that can create that quality of life for you. And I feel like you deserve to be around somebody who has that level of confidence and faith in you. You know, and I think that that confidence and faith just comes from having watched enough people make really awesome choices when they start making those choices consciously. And so I think that it's just, you know, it's like, so do I have a question? Actually, I'm trying to like keep things organized in my mind, and it's more or less.
Can you give an example of extending the freedom, like verbiage or action? Are you talking about silence and just focusing on what it's like to be you?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that in a way that probably frustrates you. It's not any one particular thing. It may be being silent. Are you talking about when someone's inviting you? I imagine it's when someone's kind of inviting you to have a fight or inviting you to talk about that thing that you know you always disagree about or whatever. It may be that. It may be. What it is fundamentally is you feel the invitation, or you feel them trying to reel you in, or you see the cheese sitting on the mouse trap and you're hungry, and you say, well, the cheese is right there. Well, it seems like they actually want to know what I think. Well, maybe if I have the conversation the right way this time, it will just have a good, maybe it'll be different than it's ever been before. Maybe I can actually let my guard down and actually try to have a productive conversation about this thing that always turns into a fight. It's seeing that and feeling that inclination to fall into the pattern again and realizing that you don't have to do it. And realizing that you could change the subject, realizing that you could go into the conversation again and just not necessarily expect it to turn out differently. You don't have you could have an unsuccessful conversation and not feel bad. The negative experiences that you typically put yourself through as a result of things going the way that they normally do, those negative experiences are not inevitable, and that there are things that you can do to either avoid the situation or to not be emotionally engaged in it, or to not suffer what's called the afterburn, which is that period of 12 to 72 hours after an altercation when you're kind of seething and pissed and can't really interact with your kids the way you want to and can't quite, plug into your job the way you want to, and you can't have good ideas the way that you like to have good ideas because you're still kind of suffering that afterburn of that you got the bad taste in your mouth, experientially speaking. And so really increasing that personal freedom is bringing into awareness more of the choices that you have to make in order to create the experience of conflict or whatever it is, non-understanding, not being heard, not being respected, whatever your current experience of it is. It's seeing more about how you go about creating that, and not necessarily not creating it, but just realizing that you don't have to. Realizing that there are new and different ways to experience this person's behavior, probably new and different ways to interact with that person, new and different ways to avoid interacting with that person in the way that I typically do. There are all sorts of things that you can do. And really for me, what I'm interested in is helping you to develop that awareness so that you can be in that moment with your kind of inner eyes wide open and recognize the choices as they kind of float across your experience, and you can grab them. That's really what it's about. It's not as simple as, oh yeah, when someone brings up the topic, you just get real silent and withdrawn, because usually people will be able to take issue with that. It's not a one particular thing, because I don't know what the appropriate thing for you to do next Wednesday when this comes up is going to be. The only person who can know that is you, and the only way that you can know that is to be kind of maximally aware in that situation and really conscious of the choices that you're making. It's creating a ready state within yourself to respond resourcefully to whatever comes up. And if what comes up is a belligerent family member, you are ready to respond resourcefully to that. And when you're plugged in that moment, and your mind is processing all the variables that apply in that moment that we probably can't foresee, but that you can be sensitive to when you're plugged in and aware, then you will assess those things, and that little inner algorithm, that awareness algorithm, will output a choice that really works well for you. And so that's I kind of circled around in a big way on this. I hope you guys have found this useful. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty good, huh?
I think so. If you guys are interested, all of our courses are 20% off. If you go to Ever Better Life University, the Beyond Belief course is a really awesome course that I think would be powerful for people right now, because it helps you to kind of establish, figure out what it is you're currently believing, because what you are believing, most people, really everyone, I can't think of anybody that's exempt from this right now. Your personal philosophy and your beliefs are being revealed to you and how you're responding to what's going on in the world right now. That you're being tested and you're being how you feel, what's going on in your mind, where your mind tends to go as far as fears or worries or concerns. It's revealing your belief system. What do you believe about yourself, the world, and other people? And if you're feeling unsettled, if you're not feeling good, your beliefs are very likely not serving you, and they are not helping you create the type of reality that you could be creating. And so the Beyond Belief course will help you it's a great little course. It's really awesome. You help you to figure out what you're currently believing, what it takes for you to shift beliefs. If you're I deal with a lot of people who are 49, 51. I get the stuff I teach in Germany medicine and the mindset stuff. Oh, but 49, it helps you to make shifts inside to make certain beliefs more compelling to you. It shows you how to install a new belief system. And it gives you these really awesome power beliefs as these foundational pillars of the things that if you believed, the way we believe all of these things, all of the 10 beliefs in the Beyond Belief course, if you're interested in seeing the world and believing things that we have tried on as far as beliefs that seem to really work for us, I highly recommend that be the course that you look into, because it's awesome for that.
That one's good. We got the Ever Better Life course as well, which is the big one. That's the kind of 10-module super course where if you are interested in kind of the big picture stuff we've been talking about, it's a comprehensive guide to all of that. And pretty much there's probably 1,000 doors in the course, and when you open those doors, there's probably 10 doors off of each one. It's a collection really of mental and experiential portals that will allow you to sort of exit out of what it's like to be you currently and enter into new experiences, new ways of kind of interacting with that stuff. There's a beliefs module in the Ever Better Life course too. One of the interesting things about the Beyond Belief course is that when I say I believe these things, what that means is that I use these as sort of premises from which I can think at a given moment in time. I ask myself sometimes, rather than reciting it and saying I believe, one of them's everything's always working out for me, right? And so rather than sitting around and affirming everything's always working out for me, that doesn't really do much for me. I feel
Steve's not over here doing affirmations and mantras very often.
I've never felt less confident when I sit around saying I'm confident. When I feel confident, it never occurs to me to sit in a corner and talk about how confident I feel. I go out there and do what confident me does. And so one of the things that's interesting about these is the belief everything's always working out for me. It's funny. So when we say it's a belief, I use it kind of as a question. So I'll ask myself when I'm in a really crappy state or I'm worried about things. I'll say to myself, if I believed that everything was always working out for me, what would what it's like to be me be like right now? What would it take in order for me to believe that right now? And also, if I did believe that, what it's like to be me be like? What would I be doing? How would I be thinking? How would I be interpreting the situation? So it's not like you just deny reality and pretend that things are other than they are. What these are like little levers that you can use to kind of neurologically, psychologically begin to change your state. To say, this is a powerful thing for a human being to be able to do. To be in a crappy circumstance and to ask themselves questions that allow their state to legitimately shift to what it would be if they were a different person, if they were, let's say, a better person, a better version of themselves, if they were in a better state. Because I know there's different versions of me for sure. There's like a mediocre version of me. There's like a mean, grumpy version of me. There's a rude version of me. There's kind of like an affable, friendly, but very deeply insecure version of me. I've been all these different things over the course of my life, and so much of figuring out how to enjoy life and do life in a way that creates stuff that I want and that allows me to respond resourcefully to stuff that I don't want. So much of what that has involved is learning how to get from one version of myself to another. And these power beliefs are kind of a cool way of doing that. Ask myself, what would I think and feel and do if I believed that everything were always happening exactly as it's supposed to. If this quarantine situation, right? Not that it's great and sunshine and roses, but at a cosmic level, everything's always happening exactly like it's supposed to. If I believed that that were true, what would I do? Well, I'd probably stop resisting the fact that things are the way that they are. Okay, well, that's interesting. If I stop resisting the fact that in this moment and for this moment, things are the way that they are, what would I do then? Oh my God, well, I'd probably start looking around for opportunities to engage resourcefully, to respond resourcefully to what is. I think I'd probably have the freedom to respond resourcefully to what is, regardless of what is at a given moment in time. Oh my God, can you imagine what life would be like if you didn't have to have life be a certain way in order for you to recognize that your job was just to feel great about dealing with life as it is? Wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, do you know how powerful you'll become? Do you know what it's, I mean, I feel like most people, in terms of what it's like to be them and the results that they're creating in their life, it's like they're driving a Ferrari, they're driving a Lamborghini, they're driving maybe a Tesla Model X or Model S, right, with that ludicrous mode, that 0 to 60 in, like, you know, was something obscene, 2.3 seconds or something like that, and they've got the parking brake on. And they're also pushing down on the actual brake, and then they push the gas and nothing happens, or a terrible commotion happens, and they don't get very far, and they do a lot of damage to themselves. And it's like, listen, there's nothing wrong with your vehicle. There's something about the operating of it that is preventing you from enjoying the wonderful experience of tearing down the road of life. And that is saying so much of like what we do is it's you can use your brain and you can use your mind in ways that make you suffer. You can use your brain and mind in ways that cause you to experience mediocrity, futility, frustration, disempowerment, all these different things. And I don't think any of it's right or wrong. It's just the different things that we're capable of doing. But there's a way, right, to start using your mind that allows you to feel powerful in the face of whatever you're currently dealing with, including self-confidence, self-concept issues, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. When you begin to respond resourcefully to it, you're energized. It's like a fertilizer for who you are when you respond resourcefully to whatever it is you're responding to. Internal insecurities, internal trauma, internal conflicts, internal whatevers, you know, stuff in your world, financial problems, relationship issues, family tensions. When you begin to respond resourcefully to horrible situations, you build a wonderful experience for yourself, because it's the quality of the response that really determines the quality of the character of what it's like to be me. And that's something I found tremendously. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm dealing with. If I can get myself to the place where I'm empowered and sort of capable of recognizing what a resourceful response would be, and I'm capable of persuading myself to engage with whatever it is, what it's like to be me instantly increases, because I'm feeling the quality of my responses to what I'm responding to. And so, yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I think we will wrap it up here for tonight.